If you've got a queasy stomach, I don't think that this is the list for you. Continue if you dare as we count down the top 10 scary times people woke up during surgery. Starting off this list, in our number 10 spot we have this scratched cornea. A woman named Carol Weir had spent years dealing with pain that was a result of her scratched cornea. She had 17 different surgeries in an attempt to fix it, and after this, doctors explained that there wasn't anything that they could do to save it and they likely needed to remove it. Carol was just happy that the pain would finally be gone. She had no idea what was in store next. The operation started out smoothly, but things quickly took a turn when she woke up. She thought that she was in the clear and that her eye had been removed and the pain was finally over, but then when she woke up she heard, quote, "cut deeper, pull harder." Carol found herself unable to speak or yell, and she couldn't even move due to the muscle relaxants. She had no way to tell anyone that she was awake. All she could do is lay there while the surgeons removed her eye. She said that she heard someone tell the intern, quote, "Don't be afraid to use all the force you need. You really have to pull." After this, she felt an extreme tugging and everything went black. This experience has stayed with Carol and impacted her life, and I truly cannot blame her. It sounds incredibly horrifying. After this operation, Carol was diagnosed with PTSD because of what she endured, which involves frequent, terrifying nightmares. In our number 9 spot today, we have plenty of problems. Donna Penner needed surgery for an unspecified reason, but it involved them going into her abdomen. She was given an anesthetic and went to sleep, but the next time she awoke, she saw the doctors washing her stomach. She was thankful the procedure was over until she heard the surgeon ask for a scalpel. She ended up being awake for the entire 90-minute operation, unable to make movements except for the smallest ones, which unfortunately mostly went unnoticed. She could feel their hands inside of her, and she even thought that she might die here. She kept trying to get the attention of the doctors, but when she would twitch her foot, someone would place a hand to still it, not realizing it was a sign that she was awake. Donna also explained she nearly suffocated because of the fact that she was on a breathing machine, which only gave her 7 breaths a minute. After the surgery was over, they realized she was awake and pulled the breathing tube out, but at this point she couldn't yet breathe on her own and needed a manual resuscitator to force the air into her lungs. Donna explained that her life was never the same after this experience, and it haunted her for the rest of her life. In our number 8 spot today, we have the extraction. This story is about someone who woke up in the middle of having all 4 of their wisdom teeth extracted, which would be an absolute nightmare, and when you hear how they describe it, it gets a little too vivid. When this person awoke, they had, quote, "The assistant had wrapped her arms around my forehead, while the dentist had his knee on my sternum and was yanking two-handed on the largest pair of pliers I have ever seen that somehow fit into my mouth. He stopped, nodded to the anesthesiologist, and then thankfully, I didn't remember anything else." That would certainly be something else. Luckily, this person also explained that during their brief moment awake, they did not feel any sort of pain, so while it may not have kept them asleep, something was definitely still working. In our number 7 spot today, we have Rebroken. This story starts off after someone broke their arm close to the wrist after a dirt bike accident. Their break went on to heal, but unfortunately it healed extremely crooked, which meant that they needed to go in for surgery to have it corrected. This involves re-breaking the arm and setting it straight. In the middle of the surgery, this person wakes up and feels tugging, followed by a sort of muffled thud. They open their eyes to see a bunch of doctors and nurses pulling their arm in different directions, and there is one doctor hitting their arm at the quote-unquote breaking point with a mallet. This has to be the worst time in the entire surgery to wake up. I mean, come on. Thankfully, however, the next thing this person knew, they were waking up in the recovery room. A nurse was standing by monitoring the situation for this exact reason. When she saw he was awake, she was ready to put him right back to sleep. In our number 6 spot today, we have the removal. When this person awoke in the middle of their gallbladder removal, based on the instruments in the surgeon's hand, they knew that they woke up in the middle of the procedure, and despite this rude awakening, it wasn't this that bothered them the most. This might seem surprising, but what quickly took over their attention was the tube down their throat that made it difficult for them to breathe while, you know, awake. The doctors in the room quickly noticed that they were awake, and they described a lot of voices speaking to them saying things like, "Please don't move." The person explained that some of them were quite loud and kind of on the verge of panicking. Finally, the surgeon called for someone to push another round of the anesthetic, and that's the last thing that they can remember. In our number 5 spot today, we have the hip replacement. Imagine waking up mid-hip replacement. That's exactly what happened to this storyteller's father. I guess he told them that when he woke up in the the middle of his hip replacement, he said it sounded like someone was building a house. Luckily, although awake, he was still numb, so he took one look at the anesthesiologist and said, "I think I'd like to go back to sleep now." Apparently, the anesthesiologist looked pretty shocked to see him awake, but quickly gave him a dose that put him right back under. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Gene. This Reddit user, who goes by the name Unicornus Rex, described their first time being put under and how it certainly did not go well. They explained that they were having an endoscopy and continued on to say, quote, "I now know that I have the gene red-haired and pale people get that causes us to metabolize narcotics and sedation differently. Basically, it takes more drugs to knock me out. The sedation they gave me put me out for about 10 minutes. I woke up suddenly and violently during the procedure. I started kicking and punching and trying to pull the endoscope out. The doctor and nurse tried to hold me down, but I kept fighting them." They continued on by explaining that they were just confused why everyone around them was so upset. They thought to themselves, "I'm just laying here doing nothing." They end off their post by saying the next time they had surgery, they again needed an extra dose of the stuff, but thankfully this time they didn't wake up in the middle. In our number 3 spot today, we have the bone graft. This Reddit story comes from the user Pimperoo, and they said, quote, "I woke up during a bone graft on my right wrist. I remember opening one eye to look around. I saw the surgeon working on my wrist with my forearm opened up and my skin looked like a curtain. It was maintained on the sides of my arm with little pins. I didn't feel anything and didn't really understand what was happening. It felt like I was watching a movie." Okay, yeah, a horror movie. They continued on to say, quote, "I remember trying to say, 'What are you doing?' But a nurse immediately realized I was awake, so she told me, 'It's okay,' and someone just put me back to sleep." In our number 2 spot today, we have the triple bypass. This tale starts off with the storyteller explaining to us that they were having triple bypass surgery, which is a serious surgery, but is also relatively safe depending on how severe the symptoms are. Regardless, during this operation, this person woke up and began to hear the sounds of the operating room, beeping, people talking, and this is when they heard someone say, "Close up that arm now." This is when they thought, "Wow, I have made it through the surgery. Oh, except this is weird, I can't open my eyes. And also my mouth feels like there's a lot of tubes in it. Also can't move my arms." Then they heard a voice again, except for this time it said, "Okay, I'm going into the chest." The storyteller explains that this certainly got their attention. They were about to have open heart surgery and weren't too keen on being awake for it. They explain, quote, "I tried moving as hard as I could to let them know I wasn't asleep. I felt pressure on my chest and it moved. As the pressure moved, I felt a coldness where the pressure was as he was cutting into me." They continued on, quote, "I worked as hard as I could to get moving and was able to flex my butt and leg muscles just a little bit. I started doing that in rhythm and got the gurney rocking a bit head to toe. The pressure stopped and I heard, 'This man is not asleep.' Someone else replied, 'Oh,' and in about 3 seconds I was out again and didn't wake up until I was in recovery. After I was moved to ICU and the hoses were pulled out of my throat, the doctor asked everyone to leave the room and he asked me what I remembered. I told him about when I woke up. He said the art to heart surgery is keeping you enough under the anesthetic so you don't know what's going on, but not so deep that they can't get the heart started again. I'm just glad he noticed I was awake before he started spreading the ribs." I really respect how this person ended on a glass half full note after undoubtedly a terrifying experience. In our number 1 spot today, we have don't move. This person needed to get surgery initially because of a problem with an irregular heartbeat. They were in the middle of getting an ablation, which I had to Google. According to hopkinsmedicine.org, this procedure involves using, quote, "small burns or freezes to cause some scarring on the inside of the heart to help break up the electrical signals that cause irregular heartbeats." Doesn't really seem like there was any good time to wake up during this procedure, but apparently this person woke up at one of the worst times. Of course, upon waking up, they moved slightly. This is when the surgeon very loudly and sternly said, "Sir, do not move. This is a critical part of the procedure," or something along those very frightening lines. A nurse quickly appeared and held his shoulders down before being put under again. Thankfully, this was all of the terrifying moments for the course of that surgery. They end off by saying, quote, "Was a scary 30 seconds or so." Yeah, I can't even imagine. Alright guys, that has been our list for today. Thanks so much for checking it out. I've been your host today, Olivia Kozlovsky, and I will see you all again soon. Bye!